I found out recently from the internet that American celebrity Rush Limbaugh has passed away. Now, I'm not going to lie, I don't know anything about the man except for his name. I've never listened to his radio show because I'm not an American. So the conversation is going to be about something else. A lot of blue check marks on the internet and even mainstream publication, which I'm going to cover in This Week is Stupid, have used this opportunity in order to insult Rush Limbaugh. And this is something that I have seen in the past when Toll Biscuit passed away, when Thunderfoot's father passed away. You have the people representative of a movement that's supposed to be about tolerance and acceptance and love and all the good stuff, take an opportune moment in order to mock the dead. Now, because of this, you have people like Hercules, like Kevin Sorbo saying, imagine the outrage if people had celebrated RBG's death. And there is indeed a couple of people on Twitter that have celebrated, but I haven't seen major news publications and I haven't seen a lot, if any, proeminent right-wingers with blue check marks on Twitter celebrating the person's death. There was a conversation about her seat, so about her position, which required to be filled, and some people could say, well, it's disrespectful because it's so shortly after she died, but that's not the same as mocking the person or mocking their legacy. So this brings the question of hypocrisy, which is a question that has been discussed a lot of times recently. Like, for example, last year, a couple of chuckleheads went out and protested the quarantine measures, and the mainstream media immediately condemned them and saying that they're killing grandma by going out. But then a couple of weeks later, you have the BLM protests, and the mainstream media were encouraging people to go out and protest. And after the protest, then they're also shaming people yet again for going out and breaking the quarantine. You have the mainstream media punishing and condemning people for saying disparaging remarks at Greta Thunberg, but you also have the mainstream media that are saying disparaging things at the Covington kids, and they even got a lawsuit because of it. You have the Democrats going Russia, Russia, Russia for 4 years, and now if you use the same hashtag not my president, I guess you're an insurrectionist. So you get to see the level of hypocrisy on display. And a lot of people are pointing out that, no, you shouldn't call the hypocrisy anymore because it doesn't do anything. There's no more point in calling out the hypocrisy. And here's what I have to say about this issue. Hypocrisy only matters if you're trying to convince people of your point of view. So if I were to say something, this winter, do not turn on the heating because you're hurting the planet, you're hurting the environment, suffer the cold. It's a lot better for the planet if you just go a couple of months while shivering in the cold. You take one for the team. If people find out that I'm turning the heating to maximum while I'm preaching that, then what I'm saying is not going to have much value. People would rather listen to someone that actually behaves in the same way that they are preaching. If I were to make a following on being a vegan, and I would constantly guilt trip my subscribers, trying to move them away from eating meat and telling them about the suffering of animals and calling them monsters for doing that, if it turns out that I myself am eating meat nonstop after making my videos, people will call me a hypocrite and they will stop listening to me. So, hypocrisy only works if you're trying to convince people, if you're trying to persuade them. The left isn't trying necessarily to persuade people, it's mostly trying to terrorize people into submission. And by this I mean that if you dissent, you can lose your job. You can end up being homeless, you can end up being in the street, you can end up not being able to provide for your family. You can end up having your social media presence tied out. Good luck running a business with that. That's how they project power. So for them, it doesn't really matter if they convinced you or not, as long as you play along. Like, they're not trying to convince you that misgendering is wrong and giving you the arguments and having a conversation with you. No, they're telling you you're not allowed to misgender. And if you do misgender, if you do call it out, then you get banned from social media. It's in Twitter's terms of service that you're not allowed. This is just one example that I pulled, which a lot of people can understand what I'm talking about. But this is why you do not see any more opinions that have controversy surrounding them on the internet. There is no more like two sides of the same issue. No, there is the right side that decent moral people follow, and then there is the wrong side that the Nazis follow. Which group are you? Are you the good people or are you the Nazis? That's pretty much how the conversation surrounding most things on the internet go as. I was a little bit surprised with the Wall Street Bets incident because for the first time ever, it was like, okay, there might be two sides of the same issue. Like, you could be against the billionaires and you are not going to be persecuted for it. Because any other way, like any other topic, pick whatever topic you want, and you will come to the realization that there is a correct opinion and a wrong opinion. There's no more like two opinions that, okay, I can see your point of view, but I disagree with it, and I see mine. And if you don't like it, we can just agree to disagree. That doesn't happen anymore. So the way the left, and by the way, by the left, I want to make it clear that I don't mean moderates and left-leaning people. I mean like the far left, the extreme fringe, the ones that go after you because you said a joke, the ones that go after an actress because she used pronouns, the ones that go after J.K. Rowling because she said something offensive. Those are the people that I mean. Now, those people, they have power. They have power in numbers. They have power in the mob. They have institutional power because the terms of service are on their side. And they even have politicians that are on their side. Meanwhile, everyone else doesn't have those things. So you cannot use power against your opponents. And in my opinion, it's even not a moral thing to use power against your opponents because then you just become a tyrant. But anyway, that's not a conversation for here. What I want to say is that the only thing that you have left is to try to persuade people if you can't use power. So you have to just come into discussions with them, which is what the radicals used to do back in the day when they didn't have power. They used humor, they used persuasion, they tried to convince people of their side. They would point the hypocrisy on the right nonstop. They would constantly expose the hypocrisy on Fox News and show examples, and that's how they managed to get people on their side. The projection of power that they have also requires them to have activists. It also requires them to have actual followers that have been persuaded in the movement, not by the projection of power, but simply by talking to them, by trying to convince them that the progressive mindset is good and is the correct one. So when you call out hypocrisy, you do have the chance of at least showing to some of these people and showing to them that their talking heads are disingenuous. Showing to them, it's like, look, your talking heads want you to have this particular lifestyle, but this lifestyle is so difficult to be had, and it's such a high bar that even the talking heads themselves are unable to follow it. So, for example, if you show to a politician that, like Justin Trudeau, which goes on and talks about the importance of not spending Easter with your family and finding new creative ways to have Easter by having Skype calls and hangouts. But then he goes himself and has Easter with his family across the country, taking his Secret Service staff with him. You show to people that, look, this person, A, doesn't care about you, B, can't empathize with you, and C, the lifestyle that you want to have, he can't have it himself. And hopefully these people, when they go to the voting booths the next time around, they will keep that in mind. Now, obviously not everyone is going to be persuaded, but hey, if you even manage to persuade one person with one example, there's good news because there's a lot of examples to be had. And there's going to just be more and more people persuaded. Now, take into account that the people that you persuade are the ones that are usually the activists, the ones that are usually in that mob engaging in cancel culture. And just to understand just the fact that the left itself is being oppressed by the cancel culture. Because I remember a couple of journalists from the New York Times who a couple of months ago were calling for the military to crack down on the protesters, on the rioters. And they got fired because of that. But now you actually have the military in the Capitol. And their job isn't coming back, that they're not being rehired, right? Isn't that interesting? I'm pretty sure they're a little bit upset about it, but hey, what can you do, right? So even left-leaning people are affected by this level of hypocrisy. And what most people want, I think this is a human desire that most people want stability. People do not like the fact that the rules are in constant flux and in constant motion. People want to know what the rules are so that they can build their lives around the rules and live accordingly. People don't like that one day this is okay, the next day this is not okay, tomorrow you can be punished for something you did 10 years ago. And, it's really taking a toll on people's psyche because they just want stability. They just want to know what the rules are. And honestly, I think the best way to do this is to try to hold the people accountable to their own rules. You cannot enforce a rule upon people if you yourself are unable to follow that rule. It's immoral, it's unjust, it's whatever you want. And yeah, sure, like if you have power, that's why a lot of people want to have power, is so that they can afford to be hypocrites. So that they can force you to live a life that they wouldn't want to live, and they can benefit from your suffering. But that is what a tyrant does. And at least a tyrant is far better than a benevolent tyrant. A tyrant that pretends they do things for the good of the people. Like that is the worst. Like a person that claims he uses compassion in order to tyrannize people. That is the worst type of person. But a tyrant that's just a tyrant, that's a lot better. That's my thought, at least. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the comment section.